It was a day filled with heavy clouds, and the steady sound of rain created a melancholy melody against the windows of Dawood's car. He was on his way to an event that promised to be crucial to his career. As one of the country's most respected architects, Dawood had worked tirelessly to get where he was. That event represented not only a professional opportunity, but also a validation of everything he had sacrificed up to that point. But that day, something felt different. As the car glided through the wet streets, something caught his attention. On the side of the road, a woman huddled in the rain, holding a small child to her chest. The image was devastating. The woman was visibly exhausted, wearing soaked clothes that offered no protection against the cold, while the child slept in her arms, oblivious to the harshness of that moment. Dawood hesitated for a moment. He had a choice: continue towards the event, ignoring that scene, or intervene. For a moment, logic tried to speak louder. He thought about the importance of the event, its reputation, and the impact of a delay. But before he could rationalize any further, his hand had already pulled the bell to speak to the driver. "Stop the car." The driver, who already knew Dawood's generous nature, expressed concern. "Mr. Dawood, the rain is heavy, and the event—" "It doesn't matter," Dawood interrupted, his tone firm but calm. "That woman needs help." When he got out of the car, the rain completely enveloped him. Each step towards the woman seemed to weigh more, not because of the physical discomfort, but because of the emotional strength that scene demanded. When he finally got close to her, he noticed that her eyes were marked by exhaustion and despair. "Are you well?" Dawood asked, his voice carrying genuine concern. The woman looked up, surprised. There was suspicion on his face. It wasn't every day that a stranger, even dressed in clothes that clearly suggested wealth, approached to offer help. "We have nowhere to go," she replied, almost reflexively, before she could even think about the question. The vulnerability of that response hit him hard. He introduced himself briefly, but realized that words wouldn't be enough at that moment. Dawood ran back to the car and grabbed a set of keys from the glove compartment. He knew exactly what to do. "Here," he said, handing the keys to the woman. "This is the address. It's an empty house. You and your daughter can stay there." The woman's eyes widened, and for a moment she hesitated, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But why? You don't even know me." Dawood gave a slight smile. "It's not about knowing. It's about helping." He then asked the driver to take the woman and child to the house. Additionally, he instructed him to stop at a store to buy food, clothes, and whatever else he needed. Before returning to the car, Dawood bent down to the girl's height and with a gentle smile said, "Now you have a safe place." As the car drove away, Dawood stood in the rain, reflecting. He knew that decision might cost him something, perhaps time, perhaps the approval of others. But there was something bigger at stake. The feeling of having done the right thing was non-negotiable. That night, as he prepared to sleep, the images of the woman and the child never left his mind. He wondered how he had gotten to that point, where he had had to choose between duty and compassion, and most importantly, what that choice would mean not only for them, but also for himself. The gesture, although simple, seemed to be the beginning of something bigger. A silent transformation was beginning to happen, not only in the lives of those two people, but also in Dawood's. Little did he know that that act of kindness would open doors to revelations and changes he could never have predicted. The rain that night seemed to wash more than the city streets. It cleared old certainties and created space for something new, a journey of connection, redemption, and discovery. And this journey was just beginning. The morning after Dawood's selfless gesture, the day began like any other. However, there was something on his mind that he couldn't ignore. The image of the woman and child, soaked by the rain, persisted like a picture engraved in his memory. He couldn't help but wonder who they were, where they came from, and what had led them to such a desperate situation. But there was also another layer to this uneasiness. Dawood knew that despite all the success he had achieved as an architect, he still carried wounds that kept him emotionally adrift. Losing his young wife had been an almost unbearable blow. Months later came the diagnosis of his father, a man who had always been his rock, now weakened by rapidly deteriorating health. Those events had shaped David in ways he himself was still trying to understand. On the outside, he was the picture of success. Charismatic, confident, always surrounded by opportunities and influential people. Inside, however, there was a constant pain, an emptiness that he filled with tireless work and increasingly ambitious goals. When he returned to the office after that rainy morning, David found that the day's flow of tasks was failing to distract him. He found himself looking at the window, where the rain was falling, wondering how Natalia and her daughter, Gabriela, were faring in the house he had offered. He wondered if they had ever felt some kind of safety or comfort, something that seemed so far away under the circumstances. While reviewing designs, David received a call from his carer, Mrs. Ewa, who looked after his father during workdays. Her tone was tense, almost cautious. "Mr. David, I need to warn you. Your father decided to go to the old house, the same one where the woman and child you helped are. He went alone. He insisted a lot. He said he was tired here and wanted to go back there for a few days." David felt a chill run down his spine. His father, Sebastian, although stubborn and determined, was unable to make decisions on his own. The thought of him being alone in a house with people he barely knew was alarming. "Did he go by car?" David asked, his voice tense. "No, he took a taxi right after you left this morning." Sebastian was a man who had never liked to feel vulnerable. Even with the physical limitations imposed by age and poor health, he refused to accept that he needed constant help. For him, the idea of being away from home, even if it was for practical reasons, seemed unbearable. Wasting no time, David picked up the phone and called Natalia. He needed to know how things were going. On the other end of the line, Natalia responded with a tone that mixed surprise and concern. "Your father arrived here in the morning. He looked tired but insisted he was fine. He's in his room now, resting." David thanked him, relieved to know Sebastian was safe, but still worried about his father's health. He decided that, as soon as work allowed, he would stop by the house to see how things were going. However, a few hours later, while finishing a meeting, he received another urgent call. It was Natalia, and her tone was panicked. "Mr. David, something happened to your father." He was sitting in the living room, and suddenly he fell. "I've already called an ambulance, but I don't know what to do." David's mind was filled with a whirlwind of thoughts as he ran to his car. On the way home, the traffic seemed slower than ever, each minute dragging by as he thought the worst. When he finally arrived, an ambulance was already parked at the entrance. Upon entering the house, he saw paramedics carrying Sebastian on a stretcher. His father was conscious, but visibly shaken. One of the doctors informed him that he had suffered a stroke, but that Natalia's quick intervention had prevented more serious complications. David approached his father, holding his hand as he walked him to the ambulance. Sebastian looked at him with a weak smile. "I'm fine, my son. I just wanted to feel like I still had some control over my life." David fought back tears as he nodded. He knew that his father's desire to maintain his independence was what had led him here, but he also understood that he needed to protect him. After the ambulance left for the hospital, David returned to the house to speak to Natalia. She was sitting on the couch, still shaking from the tension of the moment. "You saved his life, Natalia. I don't know how to thank you for that." She shook her head, trying to minimize the impact of her actions. "I just did what anyone would do. He's a very kind man. He reminded me of my own father before things went wrong." David noticed the pain implicit in her words. There was something more to the story, something he felt he would get to know better in time. But for now, he was grateful for her presence and the way she had handled the situation. As he left the house that night, David felt that something had changed within him. He had been confronted once again with the fragility of life and the strength that can emerge from simple gestures. The connection that was beginning to form between him, Natalia, and their daughter seemed to be something deeper than chance. It was as if, somehow, their paths had crossed for a greater reason. And as he drove back to the hospital, a new determination took shape in his mind. He would not just be a passive observer of the adversity that unfolded around him. It was clear to him that just as he had found strength in his own losses, he could be a source of strength for others. The next morning, as Sebastian remained under care in hospital, David reflected on what had happened. Sitting on a bench in the hallway, I watched the movement of doctors and nurses, thinking about how unpredictable life was. Despite the tension, I felt silent gratitude for Natalia. Not only had she helped her father at a critical moment, but she had also welcomed him with humanity and care, something that not even he expected when offering the house to her and her daughter. Later, when visiting Natalia and Gabriela, David realized how that unexpected encounter had transformed not only their lives, but his own. Natalia received him with a shy smile, still marked by tiredness from the previous day, but her gratitude was evident. Gabriela, playing on the floor with a rag doll, raised her curious eyes to David, as if she already saw him as someone familiar. Sitting at the table in the small living room, David wanted to know more about Natalia. I felt that, to create a true bond, I needed to understand her story, her pain, and the challenges she faced. "Natalia, can you tell me more about how you got to this situation?" he asked gently, worried about not seeming invasive. She hesitated for a moment, but then, with a deep sigh, she began to speak. His voice was firm, but it carried the weight of years of hardship. She talked about her childhood, marked by the absence of her mother and the tumultuous relationship with her father, who, immersed in alcohol, cared little about her well-being. Her life had been a series of struggles, trying to stay in school while taking care of her father, looking for a decent job, facing rejection from society, and finally being abandoned by the man with whom she dreamed of starting a family. When Gabriela was born, I knew she would be my reason to continue, but sometimes the world outside seems unbearable, he confessed, holding his daughter's hand, who was now nestled in his lap. David felt a tightness in his chest when he heard that. He realized that even though they had never met before, they shared something in common, the need to overcome pain and find strength in their deepest bonds. "I also went through difficult times, Natalia. Losing my wife was devastating. And now, taking care of my father." He paused, looking at the window, where the dim afternoon light filtered through the curtains. "I think that, in a way, pain makes us more human. And maybe when we share these stories, we truly connect." That conversation seemed to open a path to something bigger. David felt like he wasn't just helping Natalia and Gabriela. He was also helping himself. The weight of his own loneliness seemed to lift as he realized he could offer comfort and support. And at the same time, I was learning from Natalia's resilience. Later, as he was saying goodbye, Gabriela ran up to him and held out her little hand, holding a drawing she had made. It was a house with 3 figures that clearly represented her, her mother, and David. He smiled, feeling his heart warm. "This is me, my mother, and you," explained the girl, with the innocence of someone who doesn't understand the barriers that the world sometimes tries to impose. David looked at Natalia, who returned a shy smile. The simplicity of that moment seemed to encapsulate something he didn't know he was looking for, a sense of belonging that didn't come from awards or grandiose projects, but from genuine human connections. As he drove back to the hospital, David thought about the irony of his profession. As an architect, he was known for building imposing structures, projects that stood out against the city's skyline. But there, next to Natalia and Gabriela, he began to realize that the true art of building was creating bonds, invisible bridges that united hearts, regardless of where each one came from. At the hospital, next to Sebastian, David shared part of his conversation with Natalia. His father, even weak, listened attentively and, with a smile, said, "You always had a generous heart, son. Perhaps this is the most important work you will ever begin." Sebastian's words echoed in his mind. He knew there was something special about that connection, and for the first time in a long time, he felt that life was presenting him not just with new challenges, but also with new possibilities. The future seemed less scary and more promising. The next pages of his story, although uncertain, would be written with more humanity and purpose. And deep down, David couldn't wait to find out what came next. David couldn't ignore the impact Natalia and Gabriela had made on his life. He often found himself thinking about them, about how fate had placed them in his path, and how he could do more to help them. Her intuition told her that the strong woman, but marked by so many adversities, carried a potential untapped space that could flourish with the right opportunities. On a sunny afternoon, David returned to the house for a planned visit. He carried with him some bags with clothes and toys for Gabriela, as well as some books that he believed Natalia would like to read. When he arrived, he found Natalia in the yard, raking leaves with a calm but still distant look. Gabriela, as always, played happily, transforming branches into swords and leaves into crowns. After a quick greeting, David suggested they talk on the balcony. Natalia seemed hesitant, but accepted. After an initial exchange about Sebastian's health, David got straight to the point. "Natalia, I've been thinking a lot about how I can help you in a more lasting way. I know that offering a roof over your head and some immediate comfort is important, but that doesn't solve everything. I want you to have something that can never be taken away from you: independence." Natalia frowned, confused but intrigued. "Independence? What do you mean?" David smiled gently, trying to convey reassurance. "I want to help you study, Natalia, achieving something that opens doors. Have you ever thought about resuming your studies? Maybe look for a career?" The question seemed to hit a nerve. Natalia looked away, as if confronting a dream she had buried long ago. "I've thought about it many times, but it was never possible. When I was young, I loved drawing houses. I even thought about becoming an architect, but my father said that was nonsense, that I should just worry about surviving. After Gabriela was born, everything became even more impossible." "What if I told you that it is now possible?" insisted David, with a sparkle of enthusiasm in his eyes. "I can help you enroll in an architecture course or any other field you choose. Natalia, you have so much potential. You just need a chance." For a moment, Natalia was silent, absorbing his words. It was as if an invisible door had been opened, a door she didn't even know still existed. "Do you really believe I could do that?" he asked, his voice carrying a mixture of hope and fear. "I have no doubt," replied David, "and I know that Gabriela would also be proud to have a mother who is fighting for a better future, for both of you." Natalia's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, he took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "I accept. I want to try." The decision marked the beginning of a new phase for Natalia. David helped enroll her in a preparatory course, provided the necessary materials, and ensured that she had time and space to dedicate herself to her studies. Meanwhile, Gabriela began attending a nearby daycare center, where she quickly made friends. However, the process was not without challenges. Natalia, although determined, faced moments of insecurity. Some nights she stayed up late trying to solve exercises, feeling overwhelmed and questioning whether she really was capable. David noticed these difficulties and tried to be by her side whenever possible, encouraging her with words and actions. "Remember, Natalia, every great architect started with a clumsy sketch. The important thing is to keep drawing," he said one night, as they reviewed some basic plans together. Over time, Natalia began to stand out. His creativity and attention to detail caught the attention of teachers and colleagues. She also found an unexpected sense of accomplishment. Each achievement, no matter how small, seemed to erase some of the scars of the past, replacing them with renewed confidence. David also began to see the positive impact of this journey on his own life. The admiration he felt for Natalia grew every day. He saw her as a strength that inspired him, a reminder that challenges can be overcome when you have support and determination. Gabriella, in turn, seemed to flourish in this environment of new opportunities. One afternoon, while David was taking her for a walk in the park, the girl looked at him seriously and said, "When I grow up, I want to build houses, just like you, and I want my mother to draw them." David smiled, feeling his heart warm. Gabriella's vision, full of hope and ambition, was a reflection of the impact he and Natalia were creating together. That night, upon returning home, David reflected on the importance of breaking cycles. He knew that Natalia and Gabriella represented so many other stories of struggle and overcoming, and although he couldn't help everyone, he was determined to make a difference where he could. More than offering a second chance, he felt he was helping to create something bigger, a transformation that wouldn't end there, but would spread like circles in water to impact other lives. And deep down, he knew Natalia's journey was just beginning. The future was not just a distant dream. It was something that she, Gabriella, and David were building together, one day at a time. The days that followed were marked by an intense rhythm of changes for Natalia. Between her studies, caring for Gabriella, and living with David, she began to feel that her life was finally taking shape. However, something unexpected was about to emerge, bringing to light questions she had never imagined facing. It was at one of the social events where David had invited her to accompany him that everything began to change. The event was held in a modern art gallery, an elegant and sophisticated space where society's elite gathered to discuss business and visionary ideas. Natalia, although nervous, wore a simple but elegant dress that David had chosen for her, encouraging her to feel part of that world. As they walked through the hall, a tall, imposing woman approached them. His eyes were clear and intense, and his presence exuded authority. It was Maria, a renowned figure in the field of architecture, someone David deeply admired, and who he had mentioned briefly in the past. "David, what a surprise to see you here," said Maria with a smile that seemed sincere, but carried something enigmatic. "And who is this young woman?" "Maria, this is Natalia. She is studying architecture and is a very close friend," replied David naturally, without noticing the slight tremor that passed through Natalia when she heard the word Maria. Maria's eyes fixed on Natalia for a moment that seemed longer than necessary. Something in the woman's expression changed, as if a lost memory had suddenly surfaced. "Natalia," murmured Maria, her voice full of contained emotion. "May I ask, by any chance, what is your father's name?" The question took Natalia by surprise. She hesitated, uncomfortable, but replied, "My father was called Andrei. He passed away a few years ago." Maria seemed to absorb the answer, but her gaze didn't move away. She took a step back, as if she needed distance to process what she was feeling. "Andrei," she repeated, now almost inaudibly. His eyes returned to Natalia. This can't be a coincidence. The tension in the air was palpable. Natalia didn't know what to think or feel. Something about Maria's tone made her uneasy, as if there was a secret hidden behind her words. That night, after the event, Natalia couldn't sleep. The way Maria had looked at her, the intensity in her voice, everything seemed to indicate that there was something more. But what? A few days later, David received a call from Maria asking to meet him. When they met, she was direct. "David, I need to talk about Natalia. I'm pretty sure she's my daughter." David was in shock. "How is that possible, Maria? Natalia never mentioned anything about this." Maria sighed deeply, her face full of pain. "When I was young, I had a relationship with Andrei. We were together for a short time, and I got pregnant. But he disappeared with the child shortly after birth. I spent years searching, trying to find them, but without success. When I saw Natalia at that event, it was like looking into a mirror of the past. She looks like me, David, and her father's name confirmed my suspicions." David listened, stunned, trying to process the magnitude of what was being revealed. He knew Natalia needed to know the truth, but he also knew it would be a tremendous emotional blow. A few days later, Maria decided to find Natalia. It was something she couldn't put off any longer. When they arrived at the house, Gabriela was playing in the backyard, while Natalia was reading a book on the porch. Maria, as she approached, took a deep breath before speaking. "Natalia, I need to talk to you." Natalia looked at her, confused and a little apprehensive. "Of course. What happened?" Maria sat next to her, hesitating for a moment before finally saying, "Natalia, I believe I am your mother." Those words hit Natalia like thunder. Her mind tried to deny it, to reject the possibility, but something inside her knew it was true. Maria's face, so similar to his own, and the sincere tone in her voice made it impossible to ignore. "No, that can't be," Natalia murmured, the words trembling on her lips. Maria held her hands gently. "I know it's a lot to process, and I know this may seem absurd, but I spent years looking for you, and now, finally, I believe that fate has brought us back to each other." Natalia felt a flood of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, and strangely, a glimmer of hope. "If you are my mother, why did you leave me?" she asked, her voice full of hurt. Maria explained through tears how Andrzej had taken Natalia right after birth, how she tried to find her by every means possible, but always faced a void. "I never gave up on you, Natalia, never. Even when everything seemed lost, I kept trying. And now that I've found you, all I want is to make up for the time we lost, if you'll let me." Maria's sincerity began to melt the barriers in Natalia's heart, but the pain was still there, embedded like a deep root. "I need time," said Natalia, standing up with tears streaming down her face. Maria nodded. "As long as you need. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I always will be." In the days that followed, Natalia struggled with the mountain of emotions that this revelation had unleashed. She wondered if she should open her heart to Maria, if she would be able to forgive, and most of all, if she could rewrite her idea of family. Meanwhile, David remained by his side, offering silent and constant support. He knew Natalia was at the center of an emotional journey that would require courage and patience, and deep down he knew that this journey would be a turning point not just for her, but for everyone around her. The story of Natalia, Maria, and Gabriela was just beginning to be rewritten, and the following pages promised to be both challenging and profoundly transformative. The months that followed Maria's revelation were marked by emotional turmoil for Natalia. Her biological mother's presence in her life was both an invitation to reconciliation and a challenge to acceptance. Between days of intense study and moments with Gabriela, Natalia tried to process everything she had discovered. Maria, in turn, made a point of respecting Natalia's space, but never stopped being close by. In small gestures, like sending architecture books or showing up on special occasions, she showed her sincere desire to build a relationship. It was a slow but steady process that seemed to open the way to something deeper. However, Natalia was also facing another journey, a personal journey of growth and discovery. When he began his studies in architecture, he had no idea how challenging and rewarding the path would be. With each class, she delved deeper into concepts that fascinated her: shapes, spaces, functionality, and beauty. David, always present, encouraged Natalia at every stage. He often spent hours reviewing projects with her, offering practical tips, and even sharing stories from his early years as an architect. "Architecture is not just about building buildings," David once said, as they analyzed a floor plan together. "It's about building possibilities. A building is much more than bricks and concrete. It is a place where lives happen, where stories are written." These words resonated deeply with Natalia. She began to realize that architecture was not just a career, but also a way to give back to the world, to create spaces that transformed lives, just as David had transformed hers. However, not everything was easy. There were times when Natalia felt overwhelmed, especially when balancing her studies with caring for Gabriela. Some nights, while reviewing technical drawings, she found herself looking at her sleeping daughter and wondering if she was doing the right thing. "I'm dedicating so much time to this. What if I fail? What if none of this works?" Natalia said to David on one of those difficult nights. He walked over, pulling up a chair next to her. You won't fail, Natalia. The simple fact that you are trying is already a victory. Think about how many people never have the opportunity or courage to pursue their dreams. What you are doing is extraordinary, and Gabriela will see that. She will see her mother as an example of strength. These P words were what Natalia needed to move forward. As Natalia advanced in her studies, Maria began to become more actively involved in her and Gabriela's lives. One day, during a visit to the house, Maria brought an unexpected proposal. Natalia, I've been thinking, what if I helped you with your studies in a more structured way? We could work on projects together, something that would really give you hands-on experience. Natalia was surprised, but also excited. Working alongside Maria, a renowned architect, was an opportunity she had never imagined. Do you think I'm ready for this? She asked, unsure. Absolutely, Maria replied with an encouraging smile. Besides, I want you to see that this is more than a profession. It's a way to impact people's lives, just as ours was impacted. Natalia accepted the challenge, and the two began working on small projects together. The first was a community shelter, a space for families in vulnerable situations. For Natalia, this wasn't just a project. It was a way of giving back to the world the help I had received. Working alongside Maria also brought a new dynamic to their relationship. As they discussed ideas, recalled childhood stories, and shared laughs, Natalia began to see Maria not just as the woman who had abandoned her in the past, but as someone who was trying to be a part of her life now. Gabriela also seemed to flourish in this environment. She often showed up with her own drawings, saying she wanted to help with her mother and grandmother's projects. One day, while the three of them were working at the community shelter, Gabriela brought a drawing of a garden full of colorful flowers and fruit trees. I think people will want a nice place to rest, said the girl, holding the paper proudly. Maria and Natalia laughed, but took the suggestion seriously. They incorporated the idea into the project, creating a community garden that became the heart of the shelter. As all this was happening, David watched with a mixture of awe and excitement. He saw Natalia transform into someone more confident, more determined, and he realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. One day, as they walked together after a long afternoon of work at the shelter, David said something he had been holding on to for a long time. You know you're becoming an incredible architect, don't you? He said, looking at Natalia with a genuine smile. I still have a lot to learn, she replied modestly. We all do. But what you're doing isn't just architecture, Natalia. It's building lives. It's giving people something I've always wanted to give, hope. Those words stayed with Natalia. For the first time, she began to fully believe in her potential. Not just as a student or a mother, but as someone who could truly make a difference in the world. At the end of that night, Natalia looked at Gabriela, who was sleeping peacefully, and then at the projects she had spread out on the table. She knew the journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path. And with Maria by her side, David as a pillar of constant support, and Gabriela as her biggest inspiration, Natalia was ready to continue growing, facing challenges and, above all, building a future she never imagined possible. The first rays of a new day came through the window as Natalia reviewed the last notes for a project submission. Gabriela was sleeping soundly in the next room, and Maria, who had started to visit the house frequently, sat in the living room, leafing through an architecture book. The silence was filled with a sense of complicity and shared purpose. Natalia's study routine was now mixed with the practical projects she developed alongside Maria and David. However, something bigger was beginning to take shape in their hearts. The desire to use their skills to benefit the community. The community shelter they had designed together became the starting point for a series of ambitious ideas. You know, Natalia, said Maria on one of those afternoons at work, when I look at the shelter project, I think about how it is much more than a building. He is an opportunity for the families who will live there and for us who can do even more. Natalia, touched by Maria's words, nodded. I feel the same. When we started, I was just thinking about how incredible it would be to complete a project like this. Now, I see that we can go further. It was David who first suggested the idea of creating a larger program to help families in vulnerable situations. Building houses is important, but what if we can also offer educational support and professional training? He proposed, something that really helps people rebuild their lives. The idea seemed ambitious but deeply necessary. Natalia and Maria teamed up with David to outline a comprehensive plan. They met with community leaders, visited shelters, and heard stories from people facing challenges like the ones Natalia had overcome. Each report, each look of hope, reinforced the importance of what they were trying to accomplish. The project took shape as a multifunctional community center, which would include housing, training workshops, spaces for educational activities, and an open garden inspired by Gabriella's design. Maria and Natalia led the architectural design, while David mobilized resources and allies to make construction possible. The journey, however, was not without challenges. There were moments of frustration when funds seemed insufficient or when permits took longer than expected. But with each obstacle, Natalia discovered a resilience in herself that she didn't know she had before. "It's like you said, David," she reminded him during a particularly difficult meeting. "Architecture is not just about building buildings, it's about building possibilities." As the project progressed, Natalia realized something subtle but powerful was happening. It wasn't just the community center that was being built. It was an entire community coming together around a shared vision. The opening of the center was an exciting event. Families from different stories and backgrounds came to see the space they would now call home. Gabriella ran through the garden with other children, their laughter filling the air with life. Maria and David, side by side, watched with pride as Natalia gave a short thank you speech. "This place isn't just a building," she began, her voice full of emotion. "It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we believe in each other. When I was given a second chance, I promised myself I would do the same for other people. This is just the beginning." The audience responded with warm applause, but for Natalia, the most special moment came when a woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for that," said the woman, holding Natalia's hand. "You have no idea what it means to us." Natalia felt the words reverberate deeply in her heart. For the first time, he fully understood the impact of his choices and the support he had received. She hadn't just changed her own life, it was changing the lives of many other people. As the days passed, the community center became a living example of what is possible when dreams and actions meet. He was more than a place. It was a beacon of hope, a reminder that second chances can transform lives. And for Natalia, every smile, every story that emerged from that space was a confirmation that she was on the right path. The strength she had found in herself now spread to others, like expanding circles in water. But deep down, she knew her journey was far from over. There was still a lot to build, many lives to touch, and above all, many dreams to turn into reality. The community center was just the beginning of something much bigger, something she was determined to continue, with David, Maria, and Gabriella by her side. With the success of the community center, the lives of Natalia, Gabriella, David, and Maria seemed to be in a constant movement of transformation and meaning. However, more than the physical structures they helped build, their true legacy was in the human connections they cultivated along the way. As the center prospered and families found a fresh start there, Natalia felt that, for the first time, she was also ready to turn the page in her own story. Completing his architecture course was a milestone that symbolized not only his academic achievement, but also the end of a cycle of struggle and the beginning of a new phase full of possibilities. Graduation day arrived. It was a radiant morning, with the clear blue sky reflecting the energy that Natalia felt in her heart. She put on her gown carefully, adjusting her cap in the mirror as Gabriella watched her with sparkling eyes. "Mommy, you look like a princess," said the girl, smiling from ear to ear. Natalia laughed, leaning over to kiss her daughter's forehead. "And you are my inspiration, you know. All of this is for you." David arrived shortly afterwards, accompanied by Maria and Sebastian, who, although still fragile, had insisted on being present at that special moment. Their presence was a reminder of everything Natalia had achieved, not alone, but with the support of a family she never imagined she would have. In the university auditorium, as other graduates prepared to take the stage, Natalia watched the crowd. His eyes searched for the most important people in his life. When he found them, David, Maria, Gabriela, and Sebastian sitting in the front row, he felt a wave of gratitude all around him. Sea takes care of itself. When her name was called, Natalia walked to the stage to applause, holding her diploma with firm hands but a light heart. As she approached the microphone for a brief speech, she took a deep breath and began, "Today, as I hold this diploma, I feel much more than pride. I feel gratitude. Gratitude for the people who believed in me when I doubted myself, for those who offered me a second chance and showed me that it is possible to start over, no matter how difficult the path is." Her eyes met David's and she smiled. Life is not just made of challenges, but of opportunities, and the greatest of them is being able to give to others what we once received. This diploma is not just mine. He belongs to all the people who walked with me this far. The audience gave a standing ovation, but what moved Natalia most was the look of pride on David and Maria's faces. When she got off the stage, Gabriela ran to hug her, and Natalia knelt down to hold her daughter tightly. "I love you, Mum. I'm so proud of you," said the girl, her eyes shining. "I love you too, my little one. More than anything." Later that night they celebrated as a family. Sitting at the table, amidst laughter and shared stories, Natalia realized something important. The definition of family went far beyond blood ties. It was built by those who choose to be by our side, who support us and inspire us to be better. David, in a moment of silence between the two, held his hand and said, "Do you realize how much has changed? How much has it grown? Today, you are not just Natalia, the woman who started over. You are Natalia, the architect of dreams. And not just yours, but those of everyone who crosses your path." She smiled, feeling tears forming. "You're part of this, David. Without you, none of this would be possible." He shook his head gently. "I only showed the way. You were the one who had the courage to walk it." In the months that followed, Natalia took on an even more active role in the community center, now as a trained architect. She and Maria began working on new projects, expanding services to include schools, clinics, and cultural spaces. Gabriela grew up surrounded by examples of determination and generosity, learning from an early age that the greatest value in life was helping others. As for David, he and Natalia continued to build not just projects, but also a life together. The love that had blossomed between them over time was now an integral part of their journeys, a pillar of strength and mutual support. And so, with each day that passed, Natalia realized that her story was not just about second chances, but about the power to transform pain into purpose, fear into courage, and challenges into opportunities. His journey was a reminder to everyone who crossed his path. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to build. It's never too late to love. And above all, it is never too late to believe in the impossible.